When you're looking for a new watch, the conversation usually goes one of two ways: Swiss precision or German engineering. Fair enough. Both have earned their reputations. But here's a question. What if you look north instead? Because Scandinavian design isn't just about clean lines, pale wood and flat-pack furniture. It's a design philosophy shaped by climate, social democracy, culture, and a deeply held belief that everyday objects, even the ones we strap to our wrists, deserve to be thoughtfully made. Today, we're tracing Scandinavian design from its early social roots to the present day. And yes, we're ending with watches, because even timekeeping in the Nordics has something to say. Scandinavian design didn't start as an aesthetic movement, it started more as a social one. In the early 20th century, Sweden, Denmark, Norway and Finland were modernising rapidly. Industrialisation was reshaping society, but unlike much of Europe, the Nordic countries paired this transformation with expanding welfare states and a powerful belief in collective well-being. Design wasn't about status or showing off, it was about dignity. Good furniture, well-lit homes, functional objects, these were seen as essential parts of healthy society. Not luxuries for the few, but necessities for everyone. The idea was simple, almost radical in its simplicity. If people were going to spend their lives in these spaces, those spaces should work properly. The mindset, quiet, practical and humane, would eventually become one of Scandinavia's greatest exports. When modernism swept across Europe in the 1920s and 30s, Scandinavia embraced it, but on its own terms. Where continental modernism could sometimes feel severe, even ideological, Nordic designers softened the edges. They kept the clean lines and rational layouts, but introduced natural materials, curved forms, and an almost obsessive attention to comfort. Chairs weren't meant to make statements, they were meant to invite you to sit down. Architecture followed light and landscape instead of imposing itself. Even when forms became abstract, they never lost touch with the human body, how we move, how we rest, how we actually live. This was modernism, all right, but without arrogance. And crucially, it was modernism that lasted. After World War II, Scandinavian design found its global moment. The 1950s and 60s brought international recognition for Nordic furniture, lighting and household goods. These objects felt optimistic and refreshingly honest at a time when much of Europe was rebuilding, both physically and psychologically. It was also the era when Scandinavian home became a cultural symbol. Open-plan living, floods of natural light, kitchens designed for actual cooking, spaces built for real life, not for show. And here's what made it sustainable, not just environmentally, though we'll get to that, but economically. These designs could be manufactured at scale without losing their soul. That balance between craft and industry became one of the movement's defining strengths. Good design wasn't just for galleries, it was for everyone. But design never evolves in a vacuum. Scandinavian cinema, from stark mid-century drama to later minimalist realism, reinforced a cultural preference for restraint, atmosphere, and emotional clarity. Scenes were uncluttered, silence carried weight, and negative space wasn't empty, it was meaningful. Music followed similar paths. Nordic jazz, electronic music, post-punk scenes all leaned towards mood and texture over excess. Whereas Coldplay might write a song called Fix You, a Nordic band would probably call it Snow or something like that. These cultural currents created a shared visual language, calm, introspective, quietly expressive. Design absorbed this sensibility and reflected it back into daily life, from furniture to fashion to the devices we use every day. It's all connected. Today, Scandinavian design faces new pressures from climate change, overconsumption, digital overload, and the churn of trend cycles. The response hasn't been louder design, though. It's been better design. This takes the form of longer-lasting products using sustainable materials, modular systems you can repair instead of replace, reducing waste at every stage. The original social mission, that design should serve people, not just profit, has simply just updated its priorities. Ecology isn't a marketing trend here, it's a continuation of the same logic that drove the movement a century ago. Respect for materials, respect for labour, respect for the long view. Which brings us, perhaps inevitably, to watches. If you think about it, a watch is almost the perfect Scandinavian object. It's small, functional, and intimate. You wear it every day. It needs to work quietly, reliably, and without fuss. So, I guess it's no surprise that Nordic watch design reflects the same values we've been talking about all along. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Swiss watches have the heritage and German watches have precision. So why look elsewhere? Well, that's true, but maybe because Scandinavian watchmaking asks a different question. Not so much how complicated can we make this, but how honest can we be? Let's have a look at some examples, starting at the accessible end. Skagen is often people's first encounter with Scandinavian watch design. They're Danish, minimalist, and genuinely wearable. Their watches are thin, legible, and unpretentious, the kind of design that doesn't demand attention but quietly rewards it when you do look closer. In the UK, models like the Signature or Mellem typically sit in the £120 to £200 bracket. Quartz movements, yes, but wrapped in classic Danish restraint. They won't change your life, but they'll improve your wrist. Then there's Triva from Sweden, which takes things a step further. Triva has made ecological accountability a core part of its identity, experimenting with recycled plastics, reclaimed ocean waste, and ethically sourced materials. A Triva will typically run between £150 and £250 here in the UK, and the designs stay clean and modern, but there's a clear narrative behind them. Design with the responsibility baked in, not bolted on as an afterthought. Moving up the price ladder, you encounter brands like Bulbul, where watches become more experimental, with unusual case shapes and playful proportions, and a willingness to blend traditional norms. Still minimalists at heart, but with personality, like their Pebble watch, for example, which is inspired by the warm pebbles found along Scandinavian coastlines. I love that. I quite like the look of the watch as well. These usually land somewhere in the £160 to £350 range in the UK, and they're for people who want something recognisably Scandinavian but less predictable. Watches that feel like design objects without losing sight of their function. At the top end, we travel to Iceland and the JS Watch Company, a brand that embodies Nordic values, though through a very different lens. Founded in Reykjavik, JS Watch focuses on traditional mechanical watchmaking, often assembled by hand in tiny batches. The designs are restrained, almost conservative, but executed with immense care and respect for horological tradition. Prices usually start around about £3,000 and climb from there, not because of excess or complication for its own sake, but because of craftsmanship, time, and intent. These are beautifully made watches. This is Scandinavian design, stripped of trendiness and grounded in permanence. It's not trying to be a Rolex, it's trying to be what it is, done properly. So Scandinavian design has endured, not because it photographs well on Instagram, though it does, but because it makes sense. It respects people, it respects materials, it respects time, both the hours we live through and the years objects should last. Whether it's a chair, a building, or a watch on your wrist, the underlying question remains the same. Does this improve daily life without shouting about it? Well, if the answer is yes, you may well be looking at something very Scandinavian indeed. So, next time you're considering a new watch, sure, look at Switzerland, look at Germany. There are some fantastic watches from those countries. But maybe also look north. You might be surprised by what you find.